program today is mobilizing your support network, mobilizing your support squad. And in this webinar today, we're going to talk about why relationships are professional resource, why trust is the foundation for all leadership, who to include to have a well-rounded supportive network of collaborators and allies, and of course some tips on how to achieve all of this during these highly unsettling, unprecedented, challenging times in our very disrupted workplaces. And in a moment, I'll go ahead and introduce our two terrific panelists to you. But first, I just want to introduce and thank all of our corporate subscribers that are joining today, and especially a very, very warm welcome, a virtual round of applause for everyone joining us for the very first time from Charles Schwab. I'm Jo Miller. I am CEO with Be Leaderly, and for the past 2 decades, it's been my personal passion and mission to help women advance into positions of influence in their careers by leveraging their leadership strengths. I am the author of the relatively new and Amazon best-selling new release, Woman of Influence, and many of the lessons that we'll be sharing today are based on things that you'll hear in the book. And a little later in the session, I'll be giving you a way to sign up to win your very own copy. But with that, joining us from Saratoga in California, where she's Vice President of Operations with VMware, is Sonar Thekdi. So a pleasure to have you with us today.
It's great to be here, Jo. I'm excited.
Thank you. And just as a quick icebreaker, tell us, has there been one particular silver lining in amidst all of this disruption and this crazy time? What's been a silver lining for you?
Yeah, so Jo, I have 2 grown kids, and I think anyone who's had those can relate that it's really difficult to find uninterrupted time with them. And both of our kids are home with us, sheltering in place for the last 3+ months. So all the new recipes we've tried, the new workouts I've learned, and the games that I've lost are making up for being in this environment. So that's the silver lining for me.
I hear there's a balance to that, a strike, isn't there? Trying new recipes and trying new workouts kind of go hand in hand during this time. Believe me, I know. Hey, and congratulations too, because you were recently named one of the 2020 Silicon Valley Women of Influence. So congrats on that honor.
Thank you so much.
Well, guess what? Our next speaker received the same honor back in 2015. She is joining us from Palo Alto in California, where she's Senior Vice President of North America Sales at Salesforce. Welcome, Alice Katwan.
Thank you for having me, Jo. Happy to be here.
In fact, I should say welcome. Happy to have you too. I should say welcome back again for your second go around as a panelist. And Alice, same question for you. So has there been an unexpected silver lining?
It's interesting because it's similar to Sonar's silver lining. I too have 2 kids in college, and selfishly, I was very excited to have them back in the house, and so was their brother who was in high school, and to have all 5 of us back in the house again was such a treat. It has been such a treat. They're still here. They can go back to their houses at college, and they're choosing to stay with us, which I'm enjoying that time with them. So that's my silver lining, is just having the family back. Time that we wouldn't have normally had together.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. I love it. Well, enjoy the unexpected blessing, the unexpected gift of that time. And I'm also curious with our audience, what's been that silver lining for you? We'd love to hear from, open up the chat or the questions tab and type in a note. Let us know what's been a silver lining for you during all of this craziness and disruption. And look, again, if you wouldn't mind, open up pollev.com/leaderly, go ahead and take the poll, and we'll share the results in just a few minutes. So what's ahead in our time together today? Well, of course, we're talking about mobilizing your support squad, and we couldn't begin that conversation without a discussion about the value of relationships, that precious, precious resource. And then I am a firm believer that trust is at the heart of those relationships, and especially if you're hoping to be a leader in all that you do. So we're also going to talk about how trust is earned. It's not a given, you've got to earn it. And then a little on building the type of well-rounded networks that are supporting us in our most important career and leadership goals. And then finally, we're going to look at how to accomplish all of this in those remote workplaces that many of us were unexpectedly thrust into quite recently. But first up, let's talk about the value of these relationships. And as I was researching this topic, I came across some delicious bite-sized morsels of data that I wanted to share with all of you. And we'll check in with our panelists to hear what's meaningful for them as well. So some delicious data delights about the value of the networks that we create. So one of my favorite studies comes from the McKinsey Leadership Survey, which sought to understand what drives and sustains the most successful female leaders in their career. And what the authors of the study found is that one of the strongest traits shared among the most successful female leaders is connecting, meaning identifying who can help you grow, building stronger relationships, increasing that sense of belonging. And Sonar, I know this one was especially meaningful for you. So yeah, tell us, what does this one mean to you?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Let me start out by saying this quote exactly describes how I got to meet you. So I think we met almost 10 years ago at the Grace Hopper Conference for Women in Computing, and I attended one of your seminars, and you were there talking about what you have been relentless about, which is all about building your network, having a board of advisors. That concept was something that I knew, but I wasn't really going after it. And so, you know, I think that's one of the biggest testaments of how our relationship has actually advanced over the last decade. And really, you know, a couple of things that I hear from women around this topic. One, very frequently asked question is, a lot of times women tell me, I kind of feel a little inauthentic or unauthentic when I reach out to someone for just networking. It feels like it's a little superficial. How do I make it more genuine? And for that, my thing is, I either approach that with bringing a gift, so some insight that you could share with a person, or you could come with a question. In my experience, most of the time when we reach out to others, and especially women as helping other women, you know, if somebody reaches out and says, hey, I have a question, could you help me? That immediately gives us a point of connection, something common. They understand that you have something that you value that they have, and it really opens up doors. That's been my experience. And then the second thing that I would say, look, I have been at VMware for 7 months, and prior to this, I was happily at Cisco for 18 and a half years and had a fantastic growth trajectory at the company, really worked on amazing projects. But I want to remind everyone that when it comes to building your network, make sure that you're focusing on building your network within and outside your company, because it's very easy to kind of stay connected to the few people who you see on a more regular basis and keep going after that. So those are a couple of things that have really worked for me, which is, you know, at events like this one's a little hard because we're all on the phone, but think about how you can connect with people who you meet who may not be in your industry or your company.
I love it. Thank you. And so building on that data point, the same survey, the McKinsey Leadership Survey, found that people with strong networks and good mentors get their small promotions, higher pay, and greater career satisfaction. And I would just ask our audience to click on the hand icon to raise your hand if you do not want more of those three things. So click and raise your hand if you don't want more of those three. I think we can all agree. So next up, another study that I came across found that having an inner circle of female contacts is especially helpful for women, helps women overcome bias and other cultural hurdles to reach higher levels of leadership and higher levels of compensation. So Alice, why was this data point especially meaningful for you?
It was meaningful for me because I got to that point about 7 years ago where I wasn't really expanding my network of female leaders or even females in general. I didn't have a big community. Most of the people around me were in business were men. And I just I felt like I was stalling a little bit and I needed that community of women. And so at that point, I went and did my research and found a couple of organizations, and the Club of Silicon Valley was the one that I became part of. And by being part of that club, I was surrounded by 200 other women, successful women in business in various different orgs, but it allowed me to network with them and to get different perspectives. And sure enough, they asked me to be on the board. I then, helped and to give back, and it was on the board. And then that boost of confidence led me to go do public speaking events. I was at Genesis and started the women's organization, which is where I met you, Joe. And that really gave me the platform to overcome some of the personal hurdles that I had. Enabled me to move forward in my career, and it just continued to go from there. And now I make it a point, especially now, to continue to build on those networks and also to give back. So I do receive a lot of inquiries of women wanting a mentor, and I feel strongly that I want to give back. And what I've started doing is more sessions like this so I can give back to a larger audience, because I can't be everywhere all the time. But it was definitely expanding my network and taking the time to actually do it that helped boost my career.
That's terrific, Alice, and thank you. Thanks for giving us the gift of your time and wisdom today. It's great to spend time with you and learn from you as well. And so, final favorite data point, this one comes from Dr. Christina Maslach, who is a retired psychology professor from Berkeley, who spent her entire career studying the causes and remedies of work-related burnout. And get this, that the best prevention of burnout comes from the human connections, the relationships that we build. And she called those a precious, precious resource. So, as one of our former speakers, Sarpal Bayraktar from Cisco, said, there's a lot you can accomplish by yourself, but if you want to do bigger things, it is going to take a community. And that brings us to earning trust and why it's so, so important to build a foundation of trust in those workplace relationships that we're building. Here's one of my all-time favorite quotes on trust, and it comes from Dara Bizzano, Chief Accounting Officer with CBRE. I just love this quote. She said, "People do not follow a title. They follow a person whom they trust and respect and believe in, someone they know has got their back." And I know, Sonar, this one resonated for you. Why so?
Yeah, so Joe, like I mentioned, I was at one company for a very long time, recently moved, and one of the things that I have discovered is the industry is large, but also very small. You'll meet people in different phases and at different points in their careers, and at some point, all of us have different things we can give to each other. And I really believe that building a genuine connection with people, taking a deeper interest in who they are as a person, what they really value, and really thinking about how you can actually work on supporting each other is the basis for building trust in a professional relationship. I want to use an example of somebody that I met on my first day at VMware. One of the people who gave us a tour around campus, his name is Jeff Goodall, and he's been with the company for a very long time, but he has such a passion for really making sure that people coming in have a broad sort of good understanding of what the campus is and how we do things. But he was such a wealth of information. I don't really know what his title is and what he does, but I've reached out to him a couple of times to really kind of engage him in different things. And I just genuinely felt like he had an interest in who I was about, and that really helped build that trust. The titles really don't matter. Somebody who can help you no matter what situation you're in, right? And then the other big thing that I would say is, understanding what somebody is passionate about. Alice talked about giving back. I think all of us want to be able to do that, but knowing what worked for you and how that could resonate for different people is a great way to build that trust with others and continue to go. And you never know who you're going to meet at what point in your career and how you will connect. Our meeting 10 years ago, standing in line to actually ask you a question in a webinar, in a seminar of 400 or 500 people, to now it's been, and you know, that's what it's about. The titles really kind of fall apart after a while.
Yeah, and it is remarkable too, the longevity of those relationships that can start at a moment's notice in a conference hall as well. So another of my favorite quotes on trust comes from Amy Cuddy, who you, I'm sure, know as the person who did the power pose, you know, one of the most watched TED Talks of all time, Harvard professor and author. I just love this quote from Amy Cuddy. She said, "You have to connect with people and build trust before you can influence or lead them. Trust is the conduit for influence." Trust is the conduit for influence. It's the medium through which ideas travel. And if people don't trust you, your ideas might just as well be dead in the water. So, Alice, tell us, what are your thoughts on being the conduit for influence?
So I firmly believe that you have to build commonality with people. You have to understand and take the time to get to know them. And I'll give you a couple of examples, but whether you're interviewing a candidate, you're introducing yourself for the first time to a new team that you're leading, or, you know, I'm in sales, you're meeting a customer for the first time. If you walk in and show that you really took the time to research who they are, understand the situation, and speak intelligently, you know, in that first meeting, you can help establish that trust. But having that commonality is so important. And I'll share a customer example. You know, just a customer that I built a relationship with at a previous company. I was able to build that relationship over time. We did business together. And as I continued to move to other companies, regardless of the technology, he trusts that if something went wrong, that I will be there for him or could be there for him. But most recently, the technology that, or the company that he's at, has to do with they service plumbers and contractors, et cetera. And my first job in college, while I was in college, was working in a showroom. And so immediately when I was on my first call with him, even though I had this history with him, I shared with him that I had experience in one of his showrooms, you know, and so he then knew and trusted that I understand his business, I understand his business problems, and I instantly built that trust and credibility with him. But whether it's a customer or your team, and I'll tell you one quick story too, when I started at Genesis, or actually a couple years within Genesis, I took over another team, and I sat in the room and I gave them my personal background, my personal history, and they went around the room and they each gave their personal history. And what they did, which was interesting, is they connected with what I said, but the opposite of what I said. So I said that I had three boys, or actually I didn't even say that. They knew I had a family, but they all went around the room and said that they had daughters, and everybody felt like they needed to tell me that they had daughters. And when it came around to me, I said, well, I have 3 sons, and you could tell like everybody in that room was like, oh my gosh. And so, but we instantly made that connection, whether it was the opposite connection or not, and that instantly built that, you know, beginning of our trust relationship.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I know you're someone who's just masterful and has built a career on making that connection, building those connections and trust. And look, everyone, here's the bottom line here. You've got to gain trust before you influence, connect before you collaborate, listen before you partner before you persuade. So as a leader, trust really is everything. And these next series of questions for our panelists come from you, our audience. So Sonar, the next one's for you. So what are some of the key traits that you look to in an individual that you would then consider trustworthy?
Yeah, so I would say there are 3 basic things. First is authenticity. And what I mean by that is somebody who is genuine and honest. You can kind of actually go and know exactly where they're coming from, and when they are telling you something, you can you know that it's coming from a genuine place. That's super important. The transparency is also something that I really value. Anyone that I have worked with, and especially my team members, will always tell you that they will know where they stand with me at any given point in time. Being able to really have that genuine transparency in relationships really leads to longevity. That's been my personal experience. And then the third around consistency is, you know, being able to walk the talk. So if you're going to make a commitment to meet somebody, to do something for someone, then actually being able to do that. And you know, especially as you progress further in your career, one of the things that you hear from managers is it's, you know, a lot of skills can be acquired. So learning about new technologies, learning about new products, learning about new ways to connect with people, you know, all of us transitioning from, many of us, most of us being in the office to now being in our home offices, and yet continuing to build trusting relationships. It comes down to, when you make a commitment, consistently following through and being able to deliver on those commitments is super important.
I love it, the big three. I think we'll all make this our mantra going forward: authenticity, transparency, consistency, those traits of a trustworthy individual. And Alice, you know, we've all been thrust into this disrupted world where so many people are working remotely, everyone's overloaded. How do you and how can we build and maintain trust during this time?
I think transparency and empathy are kind of my two pillars for this, is showing, you know, being transparent in the sense of, if you're burned out and you can't be on video, don't be on video. Because we are on video all day long. And I'll tell you, by 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock when it rolls down, I know initially during COVID, people were doing happy hours after, like, I can't even think of that, right? But being transparent about it. And so what I have done is, if I have a call with someone that doesn't require me to be on video or them to be on video, I put my sneakers on, I let them know that I'm going to take the call, and I go for a walk in the neighborhood. And 9 out of 10, almost 10 out of 10 times, they say, you know what, I'm going to do the same thing. And they get their sneakers on and we take the call and we walk. And just by being empathetic and transparent, they then they trust that they can come to you for things. They can be honest and say, you know what, I have little kids at home and right now isn't a really good time. Can we reschedule? And they trust that you're not going to look at them differently or judge them differently because they're in a situation that they need the extra support and help during these times. So I would say, be open to being more empathetic for everyone's in different situations. It could be pets, dogs, elderly, that you're taking care of. It doesn't necessarily have to be kids, but just be empathetic that everyone's going through this differently. And if you are understanding to that and you're transparent about what is critical and not, I think that will help us get through the workload that we're in right now during COVID.
Absolutely. Empathy as one of those pillars of building trust. And look, if any of our audience has additional keys to building trust, pillars for trust, feel free to open up the questions tab, send us a note. We'd love to hear from you too. So Sonar, now to you. We keep hearing that word unprecedented. I think that's an understatement right now. People are navigating events like the tragic killing of George Floyd and the galvanizing of the Black Lives Matter movement on top of all of us dealing with this global pandemic. So what are some of the actions that you've been taking to foster and rebuild, if necessary, trust and belonging in your work environment?
Yeah, I mean, Joe, you're right. Unprecedented is an understatement, and it's just really heartbreaking, heart-wrenching to hear not just about the killing of George Floyd, which we all did, but countless others who have been part of this. So yeah, look, first and foremost, I think it's the continuing on the empathy thread that Alice started, but that's just not enough. And so being able to listen, and really, when I say listen, actually being able to understand where the other person is coming from. And as a leader, one of the key things that I've done and that we're doing across the company is actually making it okay and encouraging open dialogue and really having the tough conversations with our teams and with our leaders and just listening. The other big thing that I would say is it's a journey for myself as well. So being able to really listen to differing views of people and understanding that has been really critical to build that trust. And sometimes continuing to rebuild if people feel especially vulnerable, then for them to know that they can trust you is super important. We had a company-wide sort of meeting where we actually invited many of our Black employees at our company to come and share some of their experiences, even for themselves in recent times. And that really opened up a dialogue that has been ongoing in the company for the last several weeks around what we can do, how we can all be allies to all, and really be a part of the Black Lives Matter movement. So those would be some of the things I would bring up.
Thank you, thank you. I think one of the great things I'm seeing more and more of during this time is people remembering our shared humanity, honoring that shared humanity. And so, Alice, to you, some of your favorite tips and tricks, your top 3 tried and tested suggestions for developing trust in your relationships at work. What are your top 3?
So I'm going to go back to what Sonar and I have been talking about, I guess, throughout the last couple of questions that have been asked. But, back to the transparency, I think that is very, very important to be transparent and honest. Honesty goes a long way, whether it's something someone wants to hear or not, but just being transparent and honest, being empathetic and showing that you have a sensitivity to all types of situations, that you're understanding, that you're open to dialogue and discussion. And then lastly, I would say it's so important to establish a common connection with someone, whether it be you went to the same college or, you have the same friends from a prior job. You oftentimes see a lot of people hire people they've worked for or with in the past because it's a safe bet. They trust them. They've already built that established trust. But what do you do when you haven't built that established trust, when you didn't, you haven't worked for them before? And I would like the call to action that I would kind of give back to everyone here is give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And, be open to wanting to trust them and giving them a chance, because if you put up that wall and that barrier, it's going to make it very, very hard to establish trust both ways. And so that's what I would like to say is keep an open mind as you meet new people. And rather than always doubting or, being cautious, try to be more open to trusting and getting the information that you need to establish that trust.
That's so great, Alice. You reminded me of a quote from Ernest Hemingway. The best way to know if you can trust someone is to trust them.
Yeah.
I would also say by far the most common question from our audience is, okay, but what happens if we have what we at Be Leaderly like to call one of those flop-opportunities, right? You fail, you flop. How do you rebuild trust after it's been fractured or after it's been broken? Sonar, maybe can we hear from you first? So how do you do this? How do you regain someone's trust?
Yeah, look, so I would say, start with taking the initiative, be the first one to actually reach out, be authentic and honest, and really have an open, candid, the hard conversation, if you will. It is a hard conversation. It's uncomfortable. It's uneasy. There may have been difference of opinion. There may have been just a genuine misunderstanding. Sometimes it's really based on somebody said something else to someone and there was hearsay, like lots of different situations, but really being the person to reach out and say, I really want to talk about this because this is something that this relationship is important to me and I really want to find a way of how we move forward. So doing that is important. acknowledging the fact that trust was broken and that you're committed to actually going and building this. And then I would say, commit to small steps. It's one of those things that you can't just go from having broken trust to now meeting for coffee, every other day. Like, that's just not going to be genuine. So start with small baby steps. And then I would say make some commitments where you can establish trust. So either things that you're going to deliver and consistently go deliver them, information that you can provide, help that you'll be providing, and do it without expecting anything from the other person. It took you some time to get from point A to point B. Give the other person the space and the time to actually go and get to the point where you are as well. And lastly, I would say, if it's important, an important relationship for you, don't give up. Sometimes it takes 1 or 2 or 3 tries, and keep at it. That'll also show your commitment to really wanting to do the right thing.
Thank you. Alice, what's your approach?
Yeah, Sonar, that was fantastic. I'm just going to add to a couple things that you've already said, but I would say, use this as a learning experience, right? Because something went wrong, within whether it's a breakdown in communication, a misunderstanding, it could be such an innocent situation, but listen, learn, and see what you can do to yourself improve. And also it could improve the other person too. Whatever the outcome came of that broken trust can actually change someone's life. It can in a positive way. It could be a learning that changes in a positive way, but also even having that crucial conversation. I love that book, Crucial Conversations. It teaches you how to have these types of conversations. It also teaches you how to have them at home too. But having that crucial conversation is going to go a long way for your relationship, and it actually can enhance your relationship more than it potentially was. So make yourself more aware, use it as a learning experience. It can help strengthen not only that current relationship, but it could shape how you show up in the future and make everyone around you stronger.
Great.
Thank you. So great. So look, every leader needs a core group of strong connections, an inner circle, if you will, that support squad that keep us grounded. Who do you surround yourselves with to support you, advise you, build you up, and help you grow? So let's take a look at the composition of those networks. I like to call them the 5 key types of people to include in your support squad. And actually, rather than leave this slide up for too long, I'm going to go to the results of the poll in just a moment. So bear with me a moment here. I'm going to switch over views and see if we can't reveal the results. Okay, who is the person you would most like to add to your support squad? Let me share a little more about what each of these people contributes. So the first is the connector. The connector is the true people person who seems to know and get along with just about everyone, and they love to bring people together, make introductions, make connections, connect you to new people, and help you build your network. So if you're just starting out to think strategically and planfully about building a well-rounded network, you might want to start by seeking out a connector first. Next, of course, is the informational powerhouse, coming in here at 8% on our poll. This is the person that keeps a finger firmly on the pulse of what's going on in the organization, in the broader industry. It's someone you can go to stay connected to the latest, most relevant information, resources, trends, changing market conditions, you name it. All of that overview, that information you need so you can make better decisions with greater confidence and stay up to date. Next up is the influencer, and this one's coming in at about 10% now. The influencer is the person who makes stuff happen. They make it happen. They get people on board with ideas and initiatives. If they're working in a team, they elicit the collaboration and the agreement from teams. And look, if you're trying to make something happen, if you're hoping to influence something yourself, go to your influencer first, run your idea by them, get their early support, because with their backing, you can really start to move things forward. Next up, the mentor. I think we all know what a mentor is and does. They're that wise, trusted guide who you can go to for insightful feedback and advice that can be fuel for your own professional development. And then finally, the sponsor. And the sponsor is a bit like a mentor though, but they go beyond giving feedback and advice and use their political and social capital to move your career forward, to advocate for you. So they kick open doors to high profile assignments, to promotions, to new career opportunities. Now, the catch here is that unlike asking someone to be your mentor, you can't just go ask someone to be a sponsor typically, but you can up your chances to earn that sponsorship by delivering exceptional performance, by making your value known, and by voicing your career goals to those leaders who could be those potential sponsors. So thanks everyone for participating in the poll, and let's go check back in with our panelists and see. So what are, all right, little slide malfunction here. Here we go. Aha. All right, we're back again. Sonar, so has there been one particular relationship that stands out for you as having had a transformational effect on your career?
Yeah, I'm going to cheat on this question, Joe, and not just talk about one, but I want to first start with, you actually have been one of those people. When we go and look back at those 5 traits that you just shared, you've been a connector, you've been an informational powerhouse, you've been an influencer. For me personally, like all of those things that you talked about, and even though we don't work together, just even providing your mentorship in situations has been fantastic. So I want to just reach out and say sometimes it could be one person that could play multiple of those roles, depending on either who they are, what your relationship with them is, and also what you're looking for at that point in time. Going back to the one relationship, I would say I want to call out one of my long-term mentor. I think I've now known her for almost 19 years. She was a vice president and general manager of the business that I started at Cisco. Her name is Kathy Hill, and Kathy is a powerhouse. I am so grateful that she took me under her wings just as I was starting out pretty early in my career, and we built this relationship where initially she was giving me tips and ideas and really challenging my thinking in our immediate work environment, because I worked in her organization. I was 2 layers removed from her, but she still took me under her wings. And then over the years, I moved to a different business, and she went from being a mentor to being a sponsor. She was a senior vice president of the entire business and really kind of gave me opportunities to try new roles. And then about 10 years ago, I think she left the company, and I expected that maybe that would be the end of that relationship. And I'm so fortunate that we've still continued. And there was a time when if I didn't reach out to her for a quarter or so, she would actually ping me and say, hey, do you want to just meet for lunch or coffee? And it's just been phenomenal. She has taken such a deep interest. She knows who I am. And even as I was making the decision to move from one company that I've been at for a long time to a different role in a different company, she was very instrumental in also being that critique for me to really ask the tough questions, to make sure the conviction that I had was really something that was deep and real. And I think she has had absolutely a transformational effect on my career. And this is where I cheat and say one other small thing is, I think it's important to have a mentor, but it's also, I'm increasingly finding that people who we might call reverse mentors are really, really important. People who you can learn from. They may still be early in their careers, but can really bring a different perspective. I might be set in my ways. And so learning throughout my career is important, but unlearning a few things is also critical. And that's something I want to just put out there. And I'll let you go talk to Alice, but that's a whole nother topic for another time on reverse mentorship.
Yes, yes, and even increasingly more important right now when we're all kind of struggling to connect with technology and connect through technology. So, Alice, it's my firm belief that every leader needs a core inner circle, a core group of strong connections that keep us steady, that keep us grounded. So, who are some of those people for you?
So I about 7 or so years ago, I felt like I needed a board of directors, my personal board of directors, a group that I can go to for various issues or not, or decisions that I have to make throughout my career. And what I did, because my network, was primarily in tech, it was primarily in sales, like you can just go down, there's a lot of commonalities in what I do. I needed that board of directors to be outside of my expertise zone. I needed someone in HR, someone in legal, someone in the healthcare industry, like across industries, across corporate functions, so that if I needed help, I can call and get advice. And it's really, really important that you maintain those relationships, so you're not just picking up the phone and calling them when you need something and you haven't talked to them in a year, right? So I make a point to connect with my board of directors, obviously individually, but every quarter, whether it's a text, how are you doing, or a question, or can I help them? I've also helped my board of directors. They have children that graduated from college and they want help getting referrals into work, etc. And so it goes both ways, and to be able to give them something back ensures that they will be there when you need them. And I've had a situation where I was evaluating a career decision and was able to contact 2 of my board of directors that were familiar with the companies, familiar with the people, to get their perspectives and point of view on the industry, the business, the people, so that I could make a decision. And so it's really nice to have, folks with varying background, varying expertise across industries to keep me, to make me feel like I have the support that I need to continue along my journey.
Thank you. Thank you. So I would just urge all our listeners to think quite strategically about who do you surround yourself with, and who could you surround yourself with? Are there any gaps in your support squad? Who do you need close to you as your most trusted supporters, your board of directors, your collaborators and allies? So think about your most important career or leadership goal. Take some time, maybe once or twice a year, to map out that network, notice the gaps, and see who might you add to continue to thrive. Speaking of thriving, our conversation wouldn't be complete without a discussion of how do we accomplish all of this in what for many of us is a very changed, a very new world, the world of remote work. And Alice, I know, you're someone with a national and a global reach. You're continuously building relationships across regions, across time zones. So tell us, when it comes to building relationships in this global virtual workplace, of course, it's uniquely challenging, but what advice can you offer for us on doing this well?
So I would say, while it is uniquely challenging, you're actually accelerating your, building these relationships, because you're not having to travel. And I've talked to several executives where they say, we are having to make decisions, or we are making decisions quicker, because we're able to get, everyone's more accessible now because you're not traveling, right? And so what I would say is, don't be, shy. You have to be open to the new way of connecting, which is going to be over Zoom, which is going to be over the phone, and find that inner you that's going to help you connect with folks, over the Zoom, the comfort level that you have to connect with different people and establish those relationships. And some recommendations that I have is, like, set up a cadence. A cadence just like you would if you were traveling with your team. I used to travel to New York once a month, and now obviously I'm not traveling to New York once a month, but I have an established cadence with my team. So I ensure that I'm connected with them and they can see me even though I'm not there in person with them. I would say, body language is important. I know you said Amy Cuddy, we referenced her earlier, but people seeing your expressions and your body language, I think all of that is important. That's what you don't get when you're not in person, when you're on the phone call. And I think thanks to technology like Zoom and all the other video technology, you're able to still get that personal, like, body language to see how someone feels or what expressions they have so that you can read their language. I would say leverage collaboration tools. You know, we here at Salesforce, we have collaboration tools that we leverage that, you know, are very, very important in how we communicate and how we keep that line of communication open. I think that's very, very important. And then lastly, I would say reward and recognize your team. I would say more than ever right now, reward and recognition, inspiring and keeping that communication going is so important to make people feel good about what they're doing and the decision that, you know, how we are communicating and working today and the decisions that they're making. So I would say, you know, continue to inspire, even though it may not be in person, and reward and recognize your teams as well.
I love it, Alice. Thank you. And so, Sonar, in what ways have you seen workplaces change since COVID-19 hit us all? And what would you say are some of the new skills we all need to be developing to deal with this?
Yeah, so look, I think a lot of the things that Alice said is critical, but distributed work, and while it may seem like it's something we're doing as we deal with the shelter in place, I think the reality is distributed work is probably the new reality just going forward permanently in many places. Many companies have already announced that. I mean, I've been saying that I feel like this COVID-19 is going to do to work what 9/11 did to travel, which is like there's fundamental shifts and changes that will happen permanently. So one is, I think we'll start to see a lot more of this distributed remote work. And I think it also gives us opportunities. For example, the opportunity for like introverts to actually participate by really thinking about how you do written communication. I would say that's one of the things that's going to be increasingly more important. GitLab is a company that has been 100% remote. Their CEO on down, everyone, and I had an opportunity to speak to their team around how they've done this and their principles. And anybody who's interested, go look at GitLab's. They have a playbook online on remote playbook, and they share a lot of their ideas and best practices of what works and doesn't work. And it was fantastic for me to just even hear about the ways that they run their meetings, why it's important to always send out an agenda beforehand, how you can actually get into the discipline of sending out pre-reads and doing things to prepare for the time you have together to be most effective. So I think really understanding and giving everyone an opportunity to participate, developing your written skills, and really doing all the things that Alice talked about around connecting with people and genuinely just being available and communicating are all super important.
Absolutely. And I'm going to share that link to the GitLab remote work playbook when we get to our resources. And for our final two questions, one for each of you, just as we're getting a little closer to time, do you want to keep this one kind of snappy and concise? So Alice, what do you see as some of the critical skills that everyone needs to be productive and effective in virtual workplaces right now?
I would say what I didn't do early on that I transitioned and pivoted and had to do is give yourself mental breaks and block your calendar to give yourself some of those mental breaks so that you can go for that walk, get up and stretch, you know, catch up on your email, because when you're on video, you can't multitask. And so I felt like initially I was constantly getting behind, and I needed to block that time off to get mental breaks and to catch up. Again, if you don't need to be on video, for whatever reason, don't be on video, give yourself a break from the video, communicate with your team often, recognize their achievements, and continue to motivate and inspire, I think are the keys that I want to leave with you today.
Love, love, love all of those. Thank you. And then just real quick for you, Sonar, what are some things that you're doing right now to maintain that team cohesion and the sense of team?
Yeah, so I just continuing on Alice's trend, definitely over communicate, having regular team meetings. So, you know, making sure that's sacred time for the team to come together without an agenda and actually just talking about how everyone's doing, what their plans are. Schedule and force downtime, not just for yourself, but especially if you're leading a team. Lead by example. Talk about what you're going to do in your summer break, even if it's sitting at home in your backyard or trying out a new yoga class or whatever it is that you're doing. Actually lead by example. Maintaining that daily schedule. If you do that, and if you set the expectation with your teams that this is what's expected, I think that's going a long way. Utilizing some of the technology that we have, setting up a private channel for your own team on Microsoft Teams or Slack or WebEx or whatever your tool of choice is, but actually staying connected and having a space just for your team to do. Hosting virtual sort of open hours are all really good tips.
Okay, fantastic. So everyone, here's what we've covered so far today: the value of relationships, that precious, precious resource, the importance of earning trust, of building networks in a mindful and strategic way, and finally, some great, great tips from Sonar and from Alice on thriving in our new world of very much remote work. So I have a new poll that's open. In 3 words or less, let us know what's one action you'll be taking to mobilize your support squad. And that's at the same URL, pollev.com/leaderly, pollev.com/leaderly for the final poll. I'll share the results in a moment with our fantastic word cloud. So there's one question that really caught my eye as we go to Q&A, and it's from Angelina, and it's what do our panelists recommend for people who are quite introverted or have social anxiety that might get in their way of their ability to network successfully? Do either of you want to have a stab at that? How can people who are introverted or have social anxiety benefit from networking? What can we do?
I would say the more you do it, the easier it becomes to do. You know, when I started public speaking, I was really, really nervous, but I had so many requests. People wanted to hear my story. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And I read a book, and we'll have to share it, Joe, with you. But one of the key learnings that I got from that book is show up early to whatever session that you're going to be at, whether it's a networking session, a speaking session, etc. Get comfortable with the room, and then slowly get comfortable with the people in the room. Get comfortable with the topic so that you're knowledgeable, so that you feel confident, and practice, continue to practice. And I think that will really, really help you become more comfortable. And the more and more that you do it, so get yourself out there and don't be afraid, the more and more you do it, the easier it becomes and the more natural it becomes.
Agreed. As someone who would say I'm all of the above, the introvert, the social anxiety, would rather speak to 1,000 people than work the room at the cocktail reception after, Alice, that so rang true for me. Sonar, anything for you?
I would go back to what I opened up with, which is what has worked for me is go in with either a gift, some insight, or a question, and that will instantly give you an opportunity to have something and a purpose and a reason to connect with that person that creates this a little bit of comfort and goes a long way.
Thank you. Fabulous answers, both of you. And I have one more question that's coming from Tatiana. And Tatiana has asked, how can you build a network when you're permanently working remotely and you have a tendency to feel quite isolated? So yeah, what can you do when you feel isolated, you're permanently remote? How do you do all this building of trust and networks? Sonar, I see you nodding. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say that actually just even reaching out to people. So one of the things that's worked for me is I'm fairly new in this role, and there are many, many, many people that I haven't met in person that I'm now getting to work with. And a lot of times just setting up an introductory, just one-on-one with that person, anyone that you are interested in meeting, no commitment, just ask for a 20-minute check-in or a 30-minute check-in and actually go in and establish that one-on-one connection is a great way to start. ideally do it on Zoom if you can. But then if you're like Alice and that person really wants to do a walk and talk, be open to that as well. And just really reach out. And yeah, that's what I would say.
Hey, fantastic. Alice, anything to add? How do you build networks when you feel isolated and are permanently
I would
remote?
say like sessions like today, like, you know, I'm proud of everybody who joined today and took the time off, make the time to join sessions like this and join other maybe smaller sessions. There's so many out there. I you know, signed up to a couple of other groups too, where, you know, it's optional, right? You join when you can, and there's groups of 10, etc. And just join those sessions and have conversations. You never know who you're going to meet, but unfortunately they're all virtual. But I would say take the initiative, do some research, find sessions that are relevant to you. There's meetups that you can look at in the meetup app and find, you know, topics that, you know, are relevant to you and that you want to. It could be cooking. It doesn't even have to be work related. And then join those sessions, and that's how you can continue to build your network while we're in this virtual environment.
Yeah, I love it. You know, you don't just have to do yoga with the people that are in your block. You can do, you know, European yoga and Australia yoga. You can build networks all over the world right now. So as you can see on screen, I've shared the resources, the GitLab remote playbook, as well as a couple articles on making the most of mentoring, sponsorship, and a shameless plug here, chapters 8 and 9 in my book are good ones. We'll post all of these links and resources in the resources section. If you would like to grab the slides, the bonus materials, articles, resources, a free book chapter, sign up for our Be Leaderly newsletter, as well as we will we'll draw a winner of a book signed by me, a copy of Woman of Influence. Go ahead and send a text with the word Leaderly to 33777. So text the word Leaderly to 33777 for all of those benefits, to stay in touch, to get our newsletter, but also to grab all of those great resources that our speakers have recommended. And we'll look forward to staying in touch with you. So mark your calendar for next time. We'll be back again in late August on the 25th with another panel, hearing cutting edge practices of what various organizations are doing to strengthen their employee networks and their women's networks in particular. So stay tuned, and we'll see you back here in August. All right, so Alice and Sonar, we're back to you for a final closing thought, a final truth bomb. Alice, maybe we'll hear from you. So what would you like to leave us with today?
I'm going to leave you with a quote, one of my favorite quotes by Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that is a quote that is part of my pillars of success that I share with my team. It's very, very important to me, and I want to leave you with that.
Such a great and timely reminder. Thank you, Alice. And Sonar, what's your final thought?
Yeah, so I'm also going to leave you with a very classic quote by another classic leader. It's a quote by Gandhi called, "Be the change that you wish to see in the world." And it's one of my favorites because as leaders, you have to be in leading positions and drive the change that you want to see in the world. And I wish the best to all of you. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonar, Thekdi, and Alice Katwan. You've shared so much great advice. It's been uplifting, it's been inspiring, but practical as well. Could everyone join me in a virtual round of applause for Alice and Sonar for sharing all of their wisdom during this hour? And with that, let's go ahead and do our closing fist bump. Alice and Sonar, on a count of 3, you ready? 1, 2, 3. There you go. A bit of jazz hands, a little bit of sparkles.
Thank you, Joe. Nice meeting you, Sonar.
Thank you. Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Great working with you both. All right. And for those of you who might be joining with a group or might be hooking up online, Zooming or WebExing or whatever with your squad, we're going to leave these discussion questions up on screen for the next 30 minutes. All right, everyone. Thanks again. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.